Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Optmyzr coverage of Google Marketing Live 2024. There were some ridiculous announcements, both super exciting and also things that made me chuckle quite a bit. It's going to be a fun discussion. I am joined by the wonderful, amazing Gildner. I'm Navah Hopkins, and before we dive into our thoughts, Gil, why don't you share a little bit about your perspective, your agency, things like that?
Yeah, my name's Gil Gildner. I'm with co-founder of Disco Sloth. We do a lot of small business, mid-size e-commerce and tech ads. And I'm excited to be here with Navah talking about GML.
So there were some really exciting updates, but the one that I think we all collectively cheered for, big applause, were asset group level insights and data. We were commenting about this when we were watching, that they kind of put it up there and then let it sit, and then they just moved on.
That slide was there for about 5 seconds, and then it was gone, and I was most excited about that.
So one thing I'm kind of intrigued by with that is, does that mean that it's going to be available, but there's going to be certain setting issues? Like what's going to happen there? But the other question is, given that we're getting those levels of controls and reporting, are we going to start having to lean more into Performance Max, regardless of whether we're an e-commerce brand or not?
I think, definitely over time, I think search, everything is going to eventually be one big PMax campaign. It's what all the indications to me say, but it's going slow. We'll see.
What do you mean by slow?
I think we've been thinking this for years. It feels like at every GML for the past couple of years, I've thought, there's going to be more PMax, more whatever, more automation. It's just slowly going. Yeah. I'm not opposed to it. It's happening. We have to deal with it, but
Very fair. Now, one thing I actually thought was kind of interesting is that I was kind of commenting and riffing on the fact that, this is all great for e-commerce. This is all great for e-commerce. Where's the lead gen? And then, bam, as soon as I said it, there was the information around integrations for the CRM system. So I think big thing to take away from Google Marketing Live 2024 is that even though it seems like 99% of what has been shared is really for e-commerce, and we'll get into some specifics around video, around some of the product ads, some of the AI generation. There is still opportunity for lead gen on Google. There are still some really powerful data connector pieces there. And one thing that Optmyzr is really proud to see, and we're excited by, is that we see more and more businesses winning on Google lead gen and e-commerce, leaning into these AI tools, but with PPC protection, having those bid caps in place, having those budget protections in place. And one thing that kind of stood out to me, and we're kind of going out of order on the list that I prepared, was this idea of the AI strategist, and how that leans into how we think about Google and GML. Really curious to get your take on Google's perspective on AI, and like, are you leaning in really hard? Are you kind of being more risk averse? Like, what's going on there?
I have a pretty pragmatic approach to it. It's as an agency, we're embracing it because we have to, keep, abreast of every change, whether we like it or not. For the AI strategist part specifically, I felt that it was a little bit lip service. I wish there was a little more meat to that, because the way it was phrased was very vague to me. It was almost like, I want to know, what is AI strategy? Like, I'd like that to be defined, because otherwise it's kind of just a vague descriptor. And I don't know. I was very not super impressed with that, but.
So I made the joke that's only going to land with a few people, and I do need to call out the fact that They commented on people watch other people playing video games. Oh my God. And I thought that was leaning into a competitor product for Twitch's brand new glitch that was released at Upfront last week. But no, it's just that we're having video working there. But there's a reason why Fallout's The Enclave is evil. And it's because AI took over the strategy. Humans and AI need to work together, because when you put in that really good data, and so many other of their product releases talked about this, and they in fact even had a whole slide of AI is not a marketer. So as much as it might seem like there's a little bit of mixed messaging there, and it's totally fair and reasonable to be upset about that mixed messaging, we do still want to be mindful that we need to have those protections in place and not fully lean into AI without data to back it up, and that you do need to have that data, but that also that you're being responsible with your conversion values, with your conversion tracking and all that. And that actually dovetails nicely into another interesting, exciting topic, which was the profit goal. That was super cool.
Yeah, I think I was super glad to see that addressed in the presentations, because that means they've been listening to folks, because optimizing for specific goals like that, especially in this situation with mostly PMAX, that's been asked for and like emphasized by so many people over the past couple of years. So I was super happy to see that. They're listening. That's a good thing.
So the thing that I would really love to understand is, I thought I heard them say that it was a profit goal versus profit bidding, and revenue, when we think about max conversion value, is a bidding strategy. So it sounded like these are goals which never would have impacted learning periods and kind of creating fluctuations in campaigns.
Yeah, because but it sounded like you can swap it instantly and there's no learning period.
Right. And so what I would have loved clarification on is this a bidding strategy, and that they're saying that there is no learning period associated with making that switch would be interesting, because then that brings into question, are learning periods real? Or is this a goal? And that means that it's going to almost show that Google is starting to borrow from paid social even more. We'll talk about other areas where they're borrowing from it, where the goals actually influence the auction. And it's not a learning period thing with bidding, but it's how does it orient itself?
Yeah. Or is Google Ads just a big CPM network?
well, our
with a lot of layers.
Our founder at Optmyzr, Fred Ballas, put out a really great whiteboard. Definitely check out his profile for that, detailing his thoughts on CPM.
I'm going to second that video. That video was actually groundbreaking for me. I really changed the way I thought about some things.
Yeah. Fred sneaking in right there.
I'm sneaking in. I just arrived here. I just came from GML. Why don't I grab a seat right there?
Yeah, grab a seat. Grab a seat.
GML is just down the road. You don't want me to interrupt? Keep talking.
No, we have kind of a list of things that we thought were interesting and whatnot. So talking about, we had our friend of Optmyzr prediction round, and we were seeing how it was hilarious that you unequivocally had every single thing pegged, including the shoes, and that sneakers.
Yeah.
I think that might have been Kirk. Wasn't it Kirk?
No, that was you.
It was me? Okay.
Yeah. We were talking about your massive tennis shoe collection.
Yes.
But one of the things that kind of made us very excited is the fact that you'll now be able to create videos from static images. And that is going to be game changing from an e-commerce perspective. But I'm a little sad that we're not going to have anything comparable on the lead gen side, because there is a use case for the services that you would get, like a someone cleaning your house and having it go from dirty to clean, where it's like a static image, or say you want to have...
That's a really good point. And some of the negative feedback, I guess, that I heard being there at the event was like, even when they talked about something that should have been B2B, it was like, but then they brought in e-commerce as the example of the stats.
Yeah.
There was always this disconnect.
Yeah.
I love the example they did about the local storage.
Yeah.
And to me, that was maybe the most innovative thing, where they're actually not thinking about the ad, but the experience after the ad, and getting that conversion to happen.
It was super interesting from a tech perspective, but my gut reaction is like, how is this actually implemented? Like, have they actually talked to many self-storage unit providers? I have, and
because you have a client who's in self-storage,
one of our clients does that, and they're super happy with their normal campaigns, but guess what campaign works best for them? Standard search. So
but I thought what was fascinating there is that they're taking it from, sure, whether it's search ads or display ads or PMAX or whatever drives that demand. But I was equating it to like, there's so many difficult things that we as consumers want to do. And sure, getting the ad, getting the perspective provider, that's the easy part. But now I'm like, okay, this storage provider, but how big of a unit do I need? I'm like, okay, this one's a big one. I'm like figuring that out. So I walk away and I'm like, okay, I'll deal with that another weekend. And for Google to come in and be like, oh, put on your glasses, like scan your room. And it's like, okay, you probably need a storage unit that's this size. And so much friction becomes removed. And that was what was innovative to me, that they weren't thinking about just like connecting the keyword to the ad, but like what happens after the ad? The fulfillment.
That's good. That's going to be awesome. I just wonder how that's going to scale. Like, they're going to have it easy, like just as easily, implementable by the self-storage company as the. And that's where I think
AI, and that's where I think our job is going to be to explain that AI can actually, there's not a lot of setup. And that's always what's amazed me in the new wave of generative AI, is that you don't have to be an engineer to write code. You just have to be able to explain like, oh, well, this is what I need the code to do. Situation. And so in the self-storage example, it's like, well, we have units that are this size. And generally, I mean, you can give it a list and say in a typical 10 by 10, you can store this many beds, this many dressers, this many that and that. But then the fact of me taking a photo here in the living room and being identified the things in here, like, I don't have to train it. It understands what things are and like how big they are. So I think we just have to get our advertisers on board with giving it a shot. It's not as hard as you might think.
So I think we would be remiss if we didn't address the elephant in the room, which is AI overviews. When it was discussed during Google I/O, it got panned by everybody. No one liked it. And what was interesting is that they still led with the slide of everyone loved our AI overviews.
Well, they didn't have time. Actually, I should have been so easy to redo all the slides with that new message.
Yeah, I know.
But they didn't, right?
But what was kind of interesting is that the example they showed for the AI overview is that the ad was smaller and at the bottom. So I would actually think that from an SEO standpoint, they would be happy because the paid spots are actually lower and smaller. And their content that they're empowering the user to engage with, so it's technically an organic piece. Like, you haven't paid for that. The user is engaging with your brand because they found you online doing a search. Like, I would think that would actually be very positive. So I'm kind of confused where the friction is, and it comes down to the user experience complaint. So it'll be really interesting to follow how users actually interact both on the paid and the organic side with the AI overview. Because currently people are just trying to get rid of it. Like that's the most common search.
Yeah, sorry. I really don't understand what people's objection is to the generative search. Like, I honestly find it quite useful.
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind it.
Yeah, and then we had a great dinner last night with Eli Schwartzman. He's an SEO guy. He gave the example, I don't know if you've discussed it here, but he's like, you can do a search on Google for how do I get my blinkers to stop making noise?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you should change your blinker fluid is the generative result. And it's hilarious, but it's not just making it up, right? It's not generative, it's broken. It's the fact that was actually a ranking result on Google. And so, yes, I mean, but I think people, again, have this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, it's the new thing that's not working. But the new thing is just a layer on top of the old thing. So yeah, traditional search was broken. And like, come on, people, do we really like a world of 10 blue links where that's the best we can do? And my biggest frustration, by the way, at this Google event was that almost every example that you saw was, oh, somebody's on their phone doing a search, taking a photo. And like, I'm so sick of like these things. We should
Yeah.
be able
Yeah.
to throw them out. Gen AI, like these glasses, the Meta glasses, and that was Philip's example in the beginning. That was exciting.
Yes, I fully agree. And on the point of new, can we talk about how YouTube Shorts and YouTube in general basically took everything from TikTok and just like, here you go, TikTok's banned. Come over here.
If it works, it works. Why reinvent the wheel, right?
And I need to preface this. I hated on TikTok for a really, 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 really long time. And then 2 weeks before it was banned, I was like, all right, I'll try it. I'll figure this out. And I fell in love. The algorithm was great. The commerce piece was great. The creator bit was great. I even put out a TikTok video on Twitter that I just exported from uploading it to TikTok, promoting the coverage that we'll be doing today. So it's a great platform. But the specific thing that I'm the most excited about is that YouTube is going to allow you to pull in stickers from your shopping feed. Do you know how amazingly cool that is, that you'll be able to have effectively a productized emoji that you can just send throughout the internet and put on your various YouTube shorts? That's really, really cool.
See, when that popped up, I remembered what she said at the very beginning, which is like watching people play video games, which is Twitch. But that's also, super heavy on YouTube. Pretty soon, I'm pretty sure those stickers, you can just put them on normal YouTube videos and have sponsored items or.
Exactly. I think fundamentally user experiences, whether it's TikTok or Twitch, like, we're not asking Google to reinvent the wheel, right? We're just saying, like, you guys have the biggest ad platform. That's where
do the thing that we like.
Do the thing that's going to get us in front of the right audience. Yeah. And if that's copying it, like, listen, that's fine. Like, innovate here and there, but don't reinvent the wheel for the purpose of reinventing the wheel. I mean, the circle works pretty damn well.
Circle for search, Brooke called that. I was so I was so excited about that. I was like, yes, the friends of Optmyzr are so really smart. Cool. The other point that was interesting is the Shopify integrations. I know, Gil, you had some really clever things for.
Yeah, and anytime I see Google Ads announce something with an integration with other platforms, I like that. It just makes it easier across the board. And with Shopify, that's.
Do you think the integration went far enough? Are you excited about what they?
Yeah, I want it to go all the way.
Yeah. Sorry, like, recap it for the people who may have missed the announcement, but. So basically an affiliate integration, it sounded like, where any creator at a certain level would be able to tap into any Shopify and get a certain level. So you'd have to be in those right bubbles. Which
I have questions about that because I'm curious, like, do you need permission? Can you just find a product and start promoting it? Like me, if I was a seller, like, do I want this influencer selling my product? What if this guy is not, doesn't meet my brand guidelines?
But that But that actually goes from where I'm calling it that YouTube is copying TikTok. Part of those influencer campaigns where you would have like that brand partnership is that you're picking the influencer. So just like you would target, and to be fair, this may change once it's fully launched, but as it stands now, you would pick the influencer that you want to partner with. So those brand guidelines, and we should talk about those because those are very exciting, especially the fonts, that it can scan your site and find the fonts. Oh my God.
It's the little things, people.
It really is. But on the subject of influencers, that's actually something that YouTube is in a really unique position, because those creators are actually very used to abiding by very strict monetization standards. Many influencers have actually created double profiles on other platforms because YouTube is so strict about what is allowed to be said, what is allowed to be monetized. And so from a partnering with an influencer on YouTube, that's actually probably the safest cohort of influencers that you can partner with of all the various streaming platforms. But Fred, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I would equate it to the display network, right? Where Google's power was in the fact that they had a massive display network and they had the big sites, but they also had the niche and the long tail sites. And I think that's the power here, is that you have easy access to big influencers who are expensive. If you wanted to build a direct relationship with them, you'd probably pay more than whatever the affiliate commission is going to be in this case. But then it's also powered up by the fact that now you have all these little influencers, and to put them together, a long tail is bigger than the head, basically. So I think it's exciting.
All right.
And so long as they give controls, right? I mean, I think they have to give reporting so you can exclude and But again, a lot of announcements today, not a lot of specifics or timelines. And that's where the rubber meets the road, and we'll see if we're actually happy with what they announced.
So let's talk about Optmyzr and ad strength, because both of those decided to be big topics before Google Marketing Live. And I think it was really interesting that they dropped the stat that people who achieved a higher Opti score had a 10% improvement in conversions, specifically around adopting the AI essentials, which is a super interesting thing to test. What I'm curious on, and what I would love additional details, is did they raise their Opti score by taking action or by dismissing the alert? Because if they did that by dismissing the alert, I don't know that I'm as excited.
Like correlation or causation.
Exactly.
You know, like,
yeah.
are they just better ads because they're on top of things? Like,
but on the flip side, I also think it's really interesting that ad strength, as much as we have been told does not matter, there were a lot of stats at this Google Marketing Live focused on ad strength. And I think it is worth paying attention to. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that they made it such a recurring theme, because that's the type of thing that it's contentious, and I'm not sure. I think they raised questions. In this sort of format, is you're going to raise questions, and even people who didn't think about ad strength are going to now ask questions about it. Right, so we'll see what happens in the smaller sessions later today, and if any details come out of that. But basically, the way that I think about ad strength is it is based on the historical performance of a vast majority of advertisers. So chances are, if it worked for them, it's going to work for you. But it's not an absolute, right? And I think that's where advertisers need to take it with a grain of salt. And kind of the whole principle of innovation is that innovation tends to be something new. And if you're just doing the same old thing as everyone else, that Google says that's going to work well, then great, that's going to work well. But you're not going to innovate. You're not going to become the leader of the pack.
Correct.
And that's also the risk of AI in general, is that it looks at historically how people have written music they've made, what kind of movies have they made, and it makes more of that. And so does it rabbit hole us or pigeonhole us?
Well, like we were talking yesterday in the predictions, a lot of the generative headlines, they're just like shop shoes now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if I'm selling shoes, I want to stand out. I don't want to just be selling shoes now.
Yes.
You know, I want men's hiking boots made in Canada or something, you know. Specific.
And that was interesting, because then they showed how the shopping ads would automatically pull in descriptors about the product. So even if you had, and this is different, right? But if you had RSAs with generic headlines, but at least from the product perspective, it's like, oh, this turntable is like high quality. And although thinking about that, it was actually fairly generic attributes it was pulling in. Yeah. But just the fact that they're trying to go a little bit beyond the generic shop this thing now was interesting.
I think there was a true divide in the releases around demand gen and video and visual content versus search ads. And I think that is probably the biggest takeaway from this Google Marketing Live for me, is that the things I was super excited about. So for example, the 100 lookalikes, so the 100 people for the seed audience for lookalikes, that is huge. That is going to open up demand gen lookalike audiences for so many more marketers. The things around video and essentially copying TikTok, the pieces around the AI enhanced static to video image, all of that is visual based. So for those that were kind of hoping for text ad empowerment or keyword pieces, the power pair with broad match and bidding strategies, like it was kind of a tale of two Google Marketing Lives. Like there were some products that got a ton of attention and love, and there are other products that was like,
I've been using Power Pair for a couple of years. I didn't even know it.
First adopter.
There was also this slide about search beyond text.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, beyond words. So beyond words, and I was like, did they mean to say beyond keywords? Like, is there an underlying? Because we're all worried about keywords becoming less and less relevant. And there will be some interesting sessions later this afternoon about the future of keywords. So look forward to that. And I think they made a typo on that slide, and we might be
a Freudian slip.
Yeah, Freudian slip, exactly.
So we talked a bit about a bunch of things, but one thing in particular is that wasn't actually discussed at Google Marketing Live, but that Gildner and I had a little bit of a discussion, and I'd love for you to take too, is local service ads feels like the future of lead gen, that rather than having a standard search campaign for lead gen, you have a local service ad, which is much pared down. So if you think that you don't have control with Performance Max, let me tell you, you do not have control of local service ads. And I actually don't look forward to that future, even if it might be what's on the horizon, specifically because there are so many other mechanics and reporting pieces that people are used to in lead gen that I don't think they'd be comfortable fully going into LSA. But Gil, as a fellow LSA user, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and you know how they mentioned in the Performance Max there's going to be goals, right? That's only within Performance Max, and one of their, they had goals that were like store visits, I believe, and things like that. And nobody uses Performance Max for stuff like that. So it makes me wonder if eventually LSAs are going to be the bones of what comes next for lead gen, of more of a one-click, just get me leads.
Yeah.
That's my prediction for the next few years, is eventually LSAs/local will become a more like one button self-serve deal. I kind of hope I'm wrong, but I feel like it's going towards that.
And it's interesting because, not to bring in Microsoft in a Google event, but Microsoft has their own local service ads equivalent, professional service ads, which is feed-based. And what I was, and this is, I promise this is going to get back to Google. What I thought was kind of interesting is that there are so many pieces that could have leaned into feedless with this event, but we keep going back to the feed. So in terms of just how we think about the bones of search and the bones of Google Marketing Live for lead gen, I think that is the one thing that lead gen has to get comfortable with, is feeds. Because if you are not comfortable putting all of the information of what your services are, dealing with those taxonomies, you're probably going to get left behind. Fred, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, for as much as you may not like doing feeds, rejoice in the fact that you actually have the control of the feed. Right, and it's just a different format. And honestly, it's spreadsheet based. It's structured data, right? So it's a good thing. You're not being asked to go to learn some new interface, but you take a spreadsheet with a template that Google or Microsoft provides, and you fill in the blanks, and it's pretty easy. And as a local service business, you probably don't change your offerings that often, so you probably don't have to change it all that frequently for ads either. So I think this is, a good thing. And again, like, agencies are going to do quite well if people don't want to learn how to do the feed or optimize the feed. But I think that's the right way to do it.
And maybe we build a thing to help people with feeds.
Yeah, exactly. Optmyzr, if we can save you time, we'll help you. Oh, and actually, speaking of Optmyzr, so when they showed the on the reporting and analytics section that you could ask questions.
Was chuckling at that.
Yeah, so I was like, hey, you can ask a question about what was my performance for the last 4 weeks in Italy and Germany. Coming soon to Google. And I was like, yeah, we launched that last year in Optmyzr.
So if you're not familiar, Optmyzr Sidekick is an incredibly useful tool that will help you understand what is happening in your accounts, and will also give you some suggestions of what tools and what go-tos you may want to use. We also offer AI blueprints for workflows. That is the end of the shameless plugging. In regards to the data section, that was actually both really interesting and really light for my liking. I was very excited when he put up that slide of AI requires data, because it basically speaks to the point we've all been making, that you need data, and if you don't have data, you can't use AI. But then he didn't follow it up with, here's how to deal with AI if you don't have data, or like, here's how
what was illustrative of that whole section of the presentation was the fact that he came on stage. He was like, do you all know how many times AI has been mentioned so far? And I'm like, no, but you're the data guy. You should be able to tell us and yes, so I agree with you. It was a fairly short section. I think it was a good reiteration of the messaging that we know, which is garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Machine learning can only do as good of a job as what you feed it in terms of conversions. And it was exciting to hear about the clean room effort that's becoming more accessible. And some of the, then there was a slide about the data integrations with Zoho and HubSpot and Salesforce. And
I like that.
He said, I promise you it'll be easy. And then there was nothing to back it up or to show how it would be easy. And then, listen, Salesforce has been integrated with Google Ads for at least 5 years, if not longer. And it's not easy. A lot of people get it wrong.
And this is the core problem with all of it. People have had these tools to some iteration, to your point, for a long time, and they don't use them. Even if it is easy, it is not hard to put in a conversion value for a customer. And we still are pulling teeth trying to get conversion values for lead gen. So I think one of the things that I would be okay with AI taking over in account setup are placeholder values based off of historical data that it would then surface to you. Here's what the average conversion value is for your industry. Are you okay with me putting that in? Just that it has something to work with, because these tools require that information. And if we're not giving it, you're going to get bad performance. Where what I'm not okay with is it just doing it without telling you what it's doing.
Exactly. I mean, so there's my point about garbage in, garbage out, but I think you're kind of like making that point more sophisticated, which is it's fine to put garbage in, but your garbage becomes your baseline, right?
Yeah.
And now you navigate against that. You try to get it to be better than before. And it's fine if it's wrong, but now at least you're guiding the system and like, okay, this conversion is a little bit better. This one's a little bit worse. I don't know the exact value, but at least I'm pointing you in the right direction, even if I can't tell you the correct number.
Gil, any thoughts on that before we move on to something else?
Yeah, that covers it. Yeah.
All right. So, Fred, you came and joined us halfway through. Were there any things that you really wanted to share with the Optmyzr audience about your takes on GML?
I think we've covered quite a bit here. But no, I mean, I was very honored and lucky to be able to go to the live event. It was a relatively small audience, smaller than it has been even like 2 years ago, and it was also in that same location. So I find it curious in that regard. I was excited that some of the examples that were given in video testimonials were more bigger brands. It felt like a better mix. In the past, it was very like rah-rah, small business rules, but like here's all the stuff for big companies.
And also not all US. That actually made me really happy because it shows that distinct move outside of we only test in the US, we only bring stories from the US.
And another interesting thing that I picked up on was there was that whole clip of the woman making a video campaign, and she had little sticky notes where it was like 6 days to go until launch, 5 days to go until launch. And meanwhile, she was sitting at the computer using generative AI to achieve this campaign and do the creative for the campaign. And that to me was like, that's not what AI's promise is to me. Like AI's promise, like they said on stage, was often like do something in a matter of hours, if not minutes, that otherwise would have taken like a creative team, a photography studio. And then there was that example. I was like, wow, doesn't seem a lot faster than it used to be. She's just using a different tool set.
And I know I said end of shameless plugs, but that is the core of why Optmyzr doesn't promise that everything is going to be light years faster. It's about efficiency, and that you're able to gain through automation layering that you bring the data and then we will help you automate it, as opposed to everything's gonna be super fast, everything's gonna be super easy, and then you're sad about your performance.
Right, efficiency and then control. And I did like the examples they gave about control. And I know some people didn't like the control, and they said there should be more of an interaction with the agent and Gemini in this case to get to what you wanted to come to. But I did like the examples of where they showed a photo of a couch on a brick wall and draw a box around the light and be like, get rid of the light, expand the canvas. And so, because that's one of the fundamental things, right? I feel like AI in the past couple of years has been too much like a one shot, here's what you get, take it or leave it, which often means leave it and go do it the old, slow way. But they seem to be making strides there and making it actually faster and more useful.
So I think we have covered quite a number of items. I'm just looking through our list just to see if there's anything that we missed. So we talked about our generated reports. I do think it's useful for us to talk a little bit about first-party data and the protections. I was surprised that the GML led off with Google's deep regulatory pieces, given the context of the trial. And then they didn't then go into a lot of first-party data information. I think it almost feels like we're going to have a lot of protections and pieces in place, but they're not going to necessarily be understood by the average person. So the regulations and things that they're working through may or may not actually pertain to the privacy first world. And so I think one thing we should all look out for as marketers is the things that they have to deal with from a regulation standpoint are not necessarily the things that will actually serve us best. I actually do trust Google to provide a useful layer and lever of protection on the privacy first equation, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great slide where they said 50% of advertisers do not use first-party data.
Yeah.
That's a huge missed opportunity. I think, again, that whole section, I think the whole GML felt pretty snappy and like quick, which also made it light on details and more about the vision of where Google's trying to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't really hear anything specific as far as first, and there were pieces, right? Like again, the clean room, the data connectors, like all of that speaks to your ability to start collecting and enacting first-party data. But I don't think they tied all the pieces together that well for us.
Yeah.
So in the because this was a fairly light one, we're going to go to the go-dos off of GML 2024. Gil, what's your number one go-do off of GML 2024?
My go-do is actually very abstract.
Okay.
And that's, as I think you said yesterday, anger gets clicks and engagement. And, it's a common knee-jerk reaction from a lot of marketers of like, I hate this. This is going to destroy my agency and my livelihood. No, it's not. It's actually not. Like, actually, all of our clients are still making money. Mm-hmm. The ones that adapt, grow. And I don't have to love every single one of these new features, but I do have to know how to use them. Mm-hmm. And so does every other marketer out there. And we still have the freedom to use them in our own way. We can still enable or disable certain things and just find our own little strategy. Like they had a very brief slide, AI still requires human marketers. Mm-hmm. So I come away from this pretty optimistic, I think, because these are just tools. I'm going to learn how to use them and test every single one of them. If I don't like it, I'll express my displeasure. If I like it, I'll just double down on it. Mm-hmm. So none of this actually, I'm seeing all this stuff. It's new tools. It's new ways of doing things. Slightly different, not a whole lot of change, but it doesn't make me angry.
Good.
Yeah.
What about you, Fred? What's your number one go-do?
I don't think I have a number one go-to on this one, but I think it's kind of building on what Gil's saying. It's really about education, right? So it's a new world. There's going to be the companies that are going to be confused. Where does AI fit in? How does it change what we've been doing? And so it's either an agency or a software company or the people who do this day in, day out who are going to build that perspective and help companies evolve their strategy. But at the same time, a little bit sad that things we've been saying about like machine learning is only as good as the data you put in. Half of the people don't use first-party data, right? Why do we have to go up on stage, or they have to go up on stage again and again? And still half of the people don't do what is obviously and listen, that you don't do it today, fine. But we all know the third-party cookies going away. So like there's going to come a day when you don't have that first-party data, like you are going to be in a sea of trouble. And so that for me, it's just like keep reiterating those messages and explain to people in ways that make sense for their industry what it means. And that was maybe my to-do here is there seemed to be a disconnect between B2B examples and e-com examples.
Yeah.
And sort of take, okay, how does this thing that they position for e-com, how can you use it in B2B? How can you use it in different verticals?
So my go-to is video. There is no denying that if every single platform on Google right now is leaning into video. And if you are not testing the waters, doing whatever you can with video, you are going to be left behind. And you don't need to be a super talented videographer. You don't need to have a creative on staff. You can literally take your phone, do a quick little camera video, and that's totally fine. Google has released a number of really interesting tools to help translate static images into video, and that's great. But that human connection through video, that ability to channel both the visual and the audio learners and make that true connection and empathy with your customer, video is bar none the best way to do that. So if you take one go-do away from GML 2024, it's that Google is investing very aggressively in video. If you're not following that, you likely should not be advertising on Google because you're going to be using older products that are not as useful. So it sounds like Gil is don't get mad, evolve, make money. Fred's is do the thing, please. Like we've been telling you, please. And my go-do is show people pretty pictures and help them fall in love with you. Before we sign off, Gil, how can people get in touch with you? How can people
just follow me on Twitter? Yeah, or X, sorry.
Do you want to share the handle?
Yeah, Gildner on X.
Sounds good. And you all can catch up with Fred and I with the Optmyzr content. This is a special PPC town hall to empower you on the path to profit and victory off of GML 2024. Fred, any final words?
No. Comment on what you think we missed, what you think is important. Follow us and subscribe if you want to see more of this. And Navah, thanks for putting this one together. I'm happy I was able to pop in.
Yeah,
thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Thanks everyone for
Huge
watching.
surprise. Bye, guys.
All right.